Hello Brain Shakers, welcome to the Brain Shakers Academy. Your host here, Brave Atleast. In today's session, we're going to be looking at the Bishop's score. The Bishop's score is named after Edward Bishop, and having been around since 1964, has been an important tool in ascertaining the likelihood of a labor that is induced culminating into a vaginal delivery, or determining the success of an induction of labor. Now, there are parameters that we obviously look forward to as we look at this Bishop's score. So let's go in and understand those parameters today. So there are basically 5 parameters that we're going to be utilizing for us to understand the Bishop's score, and that the Bishop's score is basically scored from 0 up to 3, obviously different from the other scoring systems. Now, the first parameter that we're going to be looking for as we understand the Bishop's score is the cervical dilatation. So we are going to have a cervical dilatation here, which is just merely how open is the cervix as you do that internal vaginal examination, because then it will determine on the response when you begin the actual process of induction. And then the second one, we are going to have a cervical effacement. So under cervical effacement is how well taken up is the cervix. Has the cervix been made part of the upper uterine segment, or is it being pulled? And then we'll also be looking at the cervical position or cervical location. So we'll talk about cervical position, and then we will also talk about cervical consistency. So with position is it far back, is it up in the anterior aspect? With consistency, how does it feel as you are doing that examination? Is it soft, is it hard, is it medium? And then we will also need to ascertain the station of the presenting part. How high is the presenting part in relation to the ischial spines? Now, I must also be quick to make mention that I look at the ascertaining of the station in a separate video, and if you haven't followed the page, which is the Brain Shakers Academy, or subscribe to the YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? You are missing out. So head on to the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit that notification button, so that when we do share that particular video, you will also be able to see it. So these basically are the main 5 parameters that we are looking at as we are doing the Bishop's score. Now, someone may be quick also to ask a question to say, how about the cervical length? So certain charts that you obviously review and look at, they have effacement as length or cervical length, meaning that you still have the 5 parameters, but instead of saying cervical effacement, they will ascertain the cervical length. So what we will do is, when we get to the stage of cervical effacement, we will look at it in terms of percentage, and we will look at it in terms of the length as well. So with the cervical dilatation, we are going to score it as 0 if the cervical os is closed. So if we have a closed os here, then we are going to score it as 0. Now, if the cervix has already begun to open a little bit and is open at least 1 to about 2 centimeters, then we'll score it a 1. So the cervix here is about 1 to 2 centimeters. And then when the cervix is about 3 to 4 centimeters, then we'll score it a 2. So we'll say 3 to 4 centimeters. Then we're going to score it a 2. Then when the cervix is 5 centimeters and above, then we will be talking about scoring the cervical dilatation a 3. So we're basically talking about 5 centimeters and above. So everything that is above 5 centimeters there, then we would have made our assessment on the cervical dilatation. Now let's look at the cervical effacement or the cervical length. So in terms of effacement, we'll be looking at it as a percentage. So when you have 0 to 30% first, then you will score it a 0, meaning that the probable chance of it being successful or a successful induction are very minimal. Now, in terms of length, what are we talking about here? Then we are going to obviously be talking about a length of the cervical canal that is greater than 4 centimeters. Because we did make mention, and I have done a separate video where I look at the cervix as well, we did make mention that the cervix roughly will be at least about 2 to 4 centimeters. And when you are doing your assessment, if you notice that the cervix feels to be more than 4 centimeters, then you score it a 0. Now, when do we score it a 1? So if the cervical effacement or percentage is at least 40 to 50%, so if we have 40 to 50% effaced, then we will give it a 1. In terms of length, this is going to be at least a 3 to 4 centimeters. Then we are going to be scoring it a 1. When do we score it a 2? When in terms of effacement percentage, it is around 60 to 70% effaced. We score it at 2. And in terms of cervical length, this will be roughly 1 to 2 centimeters. So you have 1 to 2 centimeters here. And then when do we score it a 3? This is anything above 80%. So we are talking about 80% and above. And in terms of the cervical length, we want anything less than 1 centimeter. So less than 1 centimeter. So that means that the cervix now has been taken up and is ready to then begin to open up even the more, increasing the chances of that induction of labor to then be successful. Then we are talking about the cervical position, which is parameter number 3. So the cervical position is the cervix far posterior? Is it in the middle aspect, or is it in the anterior aspect? So obviously you want a cervix that is in the anterior aspect. So if the cervix here is in the posterior aspect, you have a hard time to actually get to the cervical os, then you score it a 0. So we are going to have a posterior cervix here. And if it is in the mid position, then you can score it a 1. So we're going to say mid position. And then if it is in the anterior aspect, then it will score a 2. So we're going to say it is in the anterior aspect. So you will notice that with the bishop score, there is no third score for cervical position. So we are going to block this and close it out. Okay. So you score only up to about 2. Then we're looking at the fourth parameter, which is the cervical consistency. How soft does the cervix feel? So the cervical consistency here, usually the cervix is deemed to feel more or less like the tip of the nose. And so that is a firm cervix. So if the cervix feels firm, then it is going to score a 0. If the cervix now has become a little bit average, it's in between soft and firm, that is medium or average, then we are going to score it a 1. So we can have medium here or an average cervix in terms of consistency, then we would score it a 1. Then we will score it a 2 when the cervix is very soft. So very soft. When the cervix is soft, it's easier to open up. And also for cervical consistency, we have no scoring for 3 here. So we will block that out. Then we have the fifth parameter, which is the station. Now the station is just the presenting part in relation to the ischiospines. You want to know at what level the presenting part is. Is it above the ischiospines? Is it below the ischiospines? So anything that is at least at -3 and above will be scored a 0. So it means that it is -3 above the ischiospines, and anything that is at -2 above the ischiospines is then going to be scored a 1, and anything that is at -1 or at the level of ischiospines, which we call a 0, then will be scored a 2. So here we're going to have -1 and a 0. And if we are below the ischiospines at +1 or +2, then you score it a 3. So we'll say +1 here and a +2, then we're going to score a 3. So basically, those are the main parameters that you would be looking for as you look at the Bishop score, the 5 main parameters scored from 0 up to 3. Now, I must also be quick to mention that there is what is referred to as a modified Bishop's score, and it just takes into consideration the cervical dilatation, the cervical effacement, and the station, and does not take into consideration the cervical position and the consistency. Now, there's also other things that can then be applied to the Bishop score, which we call the Bishop score modifiers. That is where you have the deductive and you have the additive as well. So meaning you have the plus and you have the minus. So you can do +1 or -1 to the total score that you are going to have from the Bishop's score. So when do you add a +1? It means that if you are dealing with someone who has hypertensive disorders of pregnancy, such as preeclampsia, or you are dealing with somebody who is a multips. Okay, so this is somebody who has delivered before. Their cervix is obviously going to respond a little bit faster or more appropriately to that induction process. So a 1 can then be added if you are using Bishop score modifiers. Then when do you deduct from your total score? A -1. You can deduct if you are dealing with somebody who is pregnant for the very first time, who is known as a prime gravida, and you can also deduct when you have somebody who is post-deaths. It means that the cervix has still been distended, but it hasn't still responded. Then you would then go ahead and deduct a -1 there. You can also do the same for someone who has a pre-labor or rupture of membranes or premature rupture of membranes. So basically, that's the Bishop's score, or measured or scored up to about 3, and those are your 5 important parameters where we look at the cervical dilatation, the cervical effacement, the cervical position and consistency, and also the station of the presenting pad. Now, if you do find this particular video helpful and insightful in understanding the success of an induction of labor by using the Bishop scoring system, don't hesitate to give it thumbs up, share the video, drop comments in the comments section, and if you have not followed the page and subscribe to the YouTube channel, head on to the YouTube channel and do subscribe. Hit that notification button so you don't miss any of the amazing stuff that we'll be sharing on the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.